Hello and welcome back. I hope somebody out there went out and tried to trade for Matthew Tkachuk before December hit, because just like last year, he's heating up as the calendar turns over to December. 3 goals, 6 assists, 9 points, 5 power play points in just the last 2 games, and he's also on a 5-game point streak with 13 points in that span. I tried to trade for him, and unlike Chris Drury, I couldn't use waivers to force a deal done, so I've missed out. But that's okay, because there's plenty of options on the waiver wire, especially for Week 10. So let's do what we usually do and look at the schedule. 51 games this week. You got 8 teams that play 4 games. Only 2 teams play twice. That is Dallas and Washington down here. Of these teams, there's a couple of schedules that are a little bit more favorable. You've got 3 light nights from the Rangers and the Sabres. They've got the Monday, Wednesday, Sunday, all of those. This is basically the same identical schedule. I put the Rangers up top because some of their opposition is a little bit easier than Buffalo trying to play against Washington and Toronto on the road on a back-to-back. The Rangers do have a back-to-back with travel, but they do get some favorable matchups earlier in the week. You also have Anaheim. They've got the Monday, Wednesday, then they play Thursday, Saturday. These are 2 winnable games, so if you wanted to front load this, the only problem with this is it's a 4-game road trip, so there is some travel involved and a back-to-back, and their second night of a back-to-back, just like Buffalo, is against Toronto, which should be a difficult game. You also have Chicago. They play Monday and Sunday. They've got that game against the Rangers. They're making the East Coast swing, and then they're back home against the Islanders, so they get the Islanders twice. Those are winnable games. The Islanders just cannot string any wins together. So far this year, it's been disappointing for me as a Sorokin owner, even though he's been playing very well. You also have Minnesota. All these teams down here basically play this Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, Sunday. So you got Minnesota, Toronto, St. Louis, and Columbus. Of these, I figured Columbus was the least favorable just based on the strength of schedule. They have a winnable game here against Anaheim, but their second night of a back-to-back against Carolina is tough. Same type of thing with some of these teams. There are some winnable games some point in the week, whether it's on this Thursday or this Saturday, but there is a back-to-back for pretty much most of these guys. So you will factor that in as you're looking for goaltending streams for that Saturday, Sunday, towards the end of the week when you're trying to catch up in your matchups. Now, normally we break this down by team, but since there's so many teams, we're just going to look at some forward ads, some defense ads, and then we'll go into the goalie hub to look at some goaltending trends. And there are some guys coming back. Demko is back and Kemper is back, so that will factor in as well. So let's start it off by looking at the forward ads. And for this week, the first forward ad is Marco Rossi. He is on fire right now. 4 goals, 4 assists, 8 points, 3 power play points in the last 7. He's been doing it for quite a while now. If you look back to November 8th, he's been in this channel in the high 40s. He's up to a 50 now, and he's been climbing over the last couple of weeks because of this improved play. You also have Eriksson Ek, who's out with an injury, so that will elevate Rossi in the lineup. He should stay top 6 and get power play time for the foreseeable future with Eriksson Ek on IR. So that should be beneficial at 26%. He should be there for you in a 12-team league. Now, another guy that you have that's been really productive since the coaching change is Jake Neighbors, 20% owned, dual position eligibility, 2 goals, 2 assists, 4 points is not overwhelming, but 2 on the power play, 19 shots and 18 hits in his last 6 games. You can see the hit volume, 90th percentile, 2.44 hits per game, also 2 shots per game, and the goal scoring has been there. So really consistent in these 3 metrics, but overall the points have been there over basically the last couple of games since the coaching change happened and Jim Montgomery comes over, and you can see it here on the trend. Back in mid-November, he starts to rocket up, and now he's finds himself at a 51 on the combined rating. So he's been getting it done. If you need those hits, there's a number of guys we'll look at, but he's a guy in the top 6 for St. Louis. St. Louis is not a sexy team, so not a lot of their players are owned up, but they've been playing much better lately, so that is worth mentioning. As you look at Jake Neighbors, the dual eligibility should factor in as well. Now up next, we've got another dual eligible guy on the same team, Dylan Holloway, 19% owned, center left wing, so if you need some center flexibility, he's your guy, and he's a little bit hotter in terms of points. 4 goals, 4 assists, 8 points, 8 hits, and he's got a 5-game point streak going. So you can see him going from a 47 all the way up to a 53 in the last couple of weeks here. He's been in this basic range for most of this season. It started out a little bit slow, but then rocketed up at the end of October, and he's been in this channel for a while. The overall points are a little bit low, just based on the point per game, 0.6-ish points per game, but the goal totals are not that bad. The shot volume at 2.19 is pretty good, and he also hits at 1.81 hits per game, getting a little bit of power play time. But with this improved play, maybe he gets a little bit more power play time, plus with the coaching change, you never know. Jim Montgomery might like what he sees and give him a little bit more of an opportunity. So at 19% ownership, he should be on your radar. Both of these guys should. Neighbors is a little bit better for hits. Holloway a little bit better lately for overall points. Now, if you're looking for hits, maybe your best option, there's one other guy on this list that you might want to think about, but Will Cooley, just a shade under 4 hits per game, 98th percentile there, still scoring goals, 2 goals, 5 points in his last 7, 14 shots, and 24 hits. So he's still doing what he does. He's one of the better 5-on-5 goal scorers. He doesn't get any power play time, so he does have maybe the odd power play point. Just playing on that second unit. He has been getting some second unit power play time, but the Rangers just don't use it that often, so he's not going to rack up the power play points for you. The blocks are not that great, but pretty much everything else is rock solid. He's one of your better options just in terms of completeness because of this hit volume. He does shoot the puck a little bit more. In the last couple games, he's kind of faded off that shooting, but he was scoring a bunch of goals, getting a bunch of shots and hits every game. So kind of like that Tanner Jeannot, Tom Wilson type. There's a number of guys. Kiefer Sherwood's doing it this year. There's another guy on this list that we'll look at. So a number of players are filling that archetype, and if you want those hits coming from your forward group, Will Cooley at 40% may not be your best option in terms of positional flexibility, but he has been going for a couple months now, and it is continuing as he's the Rangers' second leading scorer, I believe. That was the case up until last night. We'll have to check the stats again after their win last night. A lot of other stuff happened in Rangers land that I was focusing on with that giant Jacob Trouba trade, and that'll be scary for any other team out there playing against Gudas and Trouba in their top 6. Got to keep your head up in those games. But with that said, Will Cooley, 40% owned, single position left winger. He should be pretty consistent for you, at least in terms of hits. Up next, a guy that has popped off in previous seasons and had really nice stretches, Dylan Cozens, 24% owned. He usually does play pretty well when Tage Thompson is out. Thompson is back, but that means that the power play will probably improve, and he does factor in the bumper spot on that power play. So shot volume has been there all year, 93rd percentile, 2.77 shots per game. He also hits 1.96 hits per game, so less than Cooley, less than Neighbors, but right around the same pace as Dylan Holloway. He is a single position center, which is a little bit less favorable, a little bit higher ownership, but 3 goals, 2 assists, 5 points, 19 shots, 8 hits, and 6 blocks in the last 6 games. So getting a little bit of everything, a nice peripheral floor. He's been in this channel basically most of November, at least the last 3 weeks. And again, Tage Thompson is back, so that will improve their offense and hopefully their power play, and he should factor in there. Now, overall, on the year, the points are a little bit disappointing at 0.46 points per game. The goal numbers should come up. He was well below expected earlier on in the season, but he was firing the puck left and right, and you can see the shot volume has been there for a while. So the goals should start to come a little bit higher clip over the next couple weeks. And this was the time of the year, I believe it was 2 years ago, where he started to heat up, where it was Cozens, Quinn, and Peterka, and they were all fantasy relevant at that point. So this is the time of year to go out and grab Dylan Cozens if he's available. Now up next is Troy Terry, another dual eligible center right wing position eligibility, 21% owned. The point totals are better than a guy like Cozens at 0.76 points per game. It's been all assists lately though, so 7 assists, 21 shots in his last 6 games. So even though it's all assists, you do have a power play point in there. The shot volume is nice at 89th percentile, 2.52 on the year, and the assist numbers are good. The shot volume is good. The power play numbers are good. He's featured on that power play. So a lot of things that you would like in a points league where you're looking for some power play assists. You will probably get some of those with Troy Terry. The goals should start to come if he's going to shoot this much, and he has been shooting this much for a while. So you can see here, very consistent between a 45 and a 48 all season long. Maybe not the best, highest top end or the highest ceiling to his file, but he's been giving you pretty consistent production over the last 2 months, I'd say. Up next is our other hitter that we're featuring here, 3.58 hits per game for Marcus Foligno. He's only 5% owned, but he is dual position eligible. So if you look at Cooley's going to get you a little bit better offensive numbers, 5 points in his last 6. and he's more of a goal scorer than Marcus Foligno. But with that said, Foligno's got 3 assists, 8 shots, and 13 hits in his last 4 games. So he's been coming alive a little bit more offensively, and we'll get a little bit more of a run there in the top 6 with Zuccarello out and with Eriksson Ek out. So maybe not the top 6, but the middle 6, and that's a place where you like to have Marcus Foligno getting elevated ice time. He can rack up those hits for you. Again, 98th percentile there. You're not getting a lot of many other metrics here. No power play, hardly any shot volume. 0.81 is really bad. Blocks are not great at 44th percentile. The overall offense hasn't been there, but it has been lately. So he's relatively hot heading into a 4-game week. And at 5% with dual eligibility, he should be able to get in your lineup if you're just looking for some hits volume. Last but not least, we've got a 3-position unicorn, Ryan Donato, at 13% ownership. He's kind of been one of the only Blackhawks that's been going all season long. 93rd percentile in goals, 0.42 goals per game. That's a low 30s goal pace. He's also 91st percentile in shots, 2.63 shots per game, 1.83 hits per game. So he's going to get you a nice peripheral floor there. He does get some power play time, 75th percentile in power play points. 2 goals, 2 assists, 4 points, 2 on the power play, 15 shots, and 8 hits in just his last 5 games. So he is relatively hot, again, heading into a 4-game week, and he's 3-position eligible. So of all of these guys, he may be the most valuable in terms of getting him in on those heavy nights when you've got 15 games on that Saturday and you got 14 games on that Thursday. This could be a nice piece to add because he's probably going to play on those nights, but you're also maybe going to get him in because of that positional flexibility. So that's worth mentioning as well. He's been as high as a 59, just a shade under a 60. He's still got some room to grow into that. He's playing top 6. They had a coaching change. They usually get that coaching bump. Teams do in general. Maybe not every player does, but Donato has been playing pretty well all season long. So hopefully he gets some additional ice time as the new coach starts to find what he likes in terms of that top 6, because it hasn't necessarily been there for Bedard. It hasn't really been there for Teravainen, even Kurashev, Reichel. They haven't had the kind of seasons that they've had in the past. So Donato's been going. Hopefully he continues that into this week. But up next, let's take a look at some of the defensemen that you can find, and there are a couple good ones that are going, and then we'll take a look at some guys that aren't on a 4-game week but are still red hot right now. We'll start it off with Damon Severson at 10% ownership. I probably mentioned him last week. I covered basically every Columbus Blue Jacket that I could. There's a number of them available, so there's a couple of them missing from this week's list. If you're interested in learning about what their file looks like and whatnot, go and watch last week's video. I covered each and every one of them. But Severson, 2 goals, 4 assists, 6 points, 17 blocks in his last 7 games. That's the main feature of his file. 94th percentile in terms of blocks, just a shade under 2 blocks per game. Shot volume is decent at 1.85, and the rest is kind of mid, but not that bad at all for a guy who's not known for his offense necessarily. He was as high as a 52 earlier in the season, so there is some room in his file to grow. He has been growing basically since November 28th in terms of that progression upward, and that is on the back of this 6-point-in-7-game stretch that he's on. So at 10% ownership, you could do a lot worse than that. But if you're looking for a little bit of a different type of option, you've got Jared Spurgeon at 18% ownership. You're still going to get the blocks with Spurgeon at 89th percentile there, 1.7 per game. Shot volume is identical at 1.85, but he is currently quarterbacking power play 1 for Minnesota, so that's worth noting. As Brock Faber, they've had Faber there, they've had Spurgeon there at times, and they usually go with whoever's hotter. And right now it seems to be Spurgeon's. 3 goals, 2 assists, 5 points, 2 power play points, 14 shots, 11 blocks in his last 7 games. And that's why you can see him from about mid-November, maybe early November, all the way up till now. A little bit of a choppy bump ride all the way up to a 46. Now he's a 47, but he is playing really good hockey. He is relatively complete. If you look at the assists, 82nd percentile, the power play 77th, 89th in blocks. Overall point per game is a little bit low, but not that bad, and you're still getting a decent peripheral floor out of him. At 18%, you could do a lot worse than Spurgeon, especially for a power play quarterback on a really good offensive team this year. Now, up next, we've got a defensive, not partner, but another guy on Minnesota, and that is Jake Middleton. He's basically your hits and blocks guy for this week. He is relatively owned up at 57%, so people are on this now, but 98th percentile in terms of blocks, 2.5 blocks per game, 1.46 hits per game, so he is going to get you both. Maybe not the best if you just want hits and blocks. You can find You could probably find Jacob Trouba on the waiver wire, to be honest with you. 1.65 shots per game is not bad. His offense is much higher than his career average, so half a point per game is pretty good for a guy like him. He doesn't get any power play time, so with that said, half a point per game at even strength is really nice for a guy like Middleton. 2 goals in his last 7, but 12 shots, 12 hits, and 18 blocks. So again, the peripheral floor is what you're owning him for, and in a 4-game week, you're going to get some volume there. Now up next, we've got another top pair power play 1 guy that you can find on the waiver wire, Alex Vlasic, 7% ownership. As long as Seth Jones is not in the lineup, he should hold that power play 1 spot. It depends on what the new coach comes in and sees. Maybe he does want him there. Maybe he doesn't. We'll have to monitor that situation, but pretty good blocks numbers from him as well. 98th percentile, 2.35 blocks per game. Shot volume a little bit lower at 1.42, but the power play numbers are better. 87th percentile there. He's got 2 power play points in just the last 4 games to go along with 3 points, 4 hits, 4 blocks. So playing pretty well heading into this 4-game week. Really low ownership. He should be there for you in pretty much every league size. Maybe not the best team to choose from. They do have kind of a difficult schedule against some of the better teams in the league. But with that said, if you're looking for a power play guy, there's not a whole lot of options out there. Sometimes you can find a guy who's gone a little bit colder on one of those lesser power plays. Vlasic is at least hot on one of those lesser power plays right now, and you're getting access to Bedard with all of that said. So 7% ownership. Vlasic is one of your power play quarterbacks for this week. These are all of the guys I'm recommending just based on volume plays for the schedule, but there's 2 other guys that we have to talk about that are red hot heading into week 10. The first one is Luke Hughes. So injured to start the year, so obviously Dougie Hamilton took power play 1 duties, but with the return from injury, Hughes took a little bit of time to get going, but he's definitely going now. 5 points. He's got a 4-game point streak, 1 goal, 4 assists, 5 points in that span. Power play 2 quarterback, and that's not necessarily the worst thing because you do have Timo Meier on that unit. You've got 2 pretty good units, and the Devils are really good on the power play this year, top 3, I believe, in the NHL currently. So 82nd percentile in terms of assists, 77th in terms of power play. The blocks are there occasionally. He's not necessarily the best peripheral guy. This would be a play in terms of finding some point production. If you're in a points league that weighs points a little bit heavier, assists, even power play assists are going to get you a little bit more point weighting than you're going to go out for a guy like Luke Hughes at 43%. And, you know, the usual statement in terms of guys with 2 power play quarterbacks that are similar. If one of them goes down, you get the top unit power play quarterback, and you're only getting him at 43% ownership. Not to jinx Dougie Hamilton, who's been really good so far this year, but with that said, Hughes could elevate into that role, and you're getting him at a relatively decent price at 43% ownership. Last but not least, we'll talk about Lane Hudson. 5 assists. He's got a 5-game point streak going right now, 2 power play points, 10 shots, 7 blocks in that 5-game point streak. 34% owned is pretty decent. He does get you some blocks, 83rd percentile, 1.42 per game. The power play numbers are nice, even though he is usually the power play 2 guy. If Matheson's out of the lineup, he elevates to the power play 1. But if he is in the lineup, then you still have Hudson getting a little bit of time on power play 2, unlike a team like the Rangers, which doesn't use him that often. 95th percentile in terms of assists, and he does not have a goal on the season. So shot volume is a little bit low. It has improved. He was below 1 shot per game, so he is at least shooting a little bit more. You can see his trend from November 28th to December 7th rocketing up here because of this 5-game point streak. 10 shots and 7 blocks in that span, so the blocks have been there. Obviously, the assists and the power play. If he can start scoring some goals, he will give you some value for sure at 34% ownership. That's going to do it for the D. Up next, let's take a look at the Goaltending Hub to find some goaltending trends. So the first thing I want to look at on the Goalie Hub is Adin Hill. Look at this trend. So up from a 39, 48, all the way up to a 56. Took a little bit of a downturn, now up to a 71. He's the 11th goalie on the Goalie Hub, and that's on the back of a really strong last couple of weeks. 4 wins in his last 5 games, 1.57 goals against, 944 save percentage. He's owned up. He's at 84% ownership, but he's back. So if you owned him and you were waiting on him to come back into form, now he is picking up where he left off last year. But there's a couple of conversations to talk about. Guys coming off of injury, And one of those guys is Thatcher Demko, who we don't have data on this season. Kevin Lankinen is at number 7 on the goalie hub. He's been really consistent, right around a 77 for most of the season. A little bit of an increase here, a little bit of a dip there, but basically in this channel, 908 save percentage, 2.6 goals against, 13 wins in 19 games. The team defense is really good. He's right around expected. Total save volume is really great there. And Lankinen is pretty available, or he was pretty available earlier in the year. With Demko coming back, I would imagine his ownership goes down, but he's been playing so well, and Demko is injury prone. I own him currently, and I'm still debating what to do, but I don't think I'm going to drop him. I do believe it'll be a split between him and Demko. They don't want to rush Demko into too many starts at this point after coming back from an injury, so I'm going to hold on to Lankinen. That's kind of the guesswork that you have to do with these types of things. And the same thing can kind of be said about the LA Kings. Darcy Kemper is back from injury, and Dave Riddick has been one of the better goaltenders, 19th on the hub right now. Pretty consistent over the past couple of weeks in this 63-65 range. Team defense, 97th percentile. So that's why you would own either Kemper or Dave Riddick. And Riddick is the more ownable of the two. So as I look up his ownership, you can see, 26% ownership for Riddick. Kemper is in the 60s. So Kemper is probably not available for you on the wire. In this case, I would kind of defer to Kemper. I think, last year Kemper got the starting job in Washington and kind of flubbed it, and Charlie Lindgren took over. So if you wanted to hold on to Dave Riddick, you could do so. But at that ownership percentage, I think you could probably drop him and then pick him back up at some point in the future. If you're really worried about the goaltending, I would hold on to him. But I own 4 goalies, so I've got to get rid of one. I ended up getting rid of another guy who we can talk about right now, and that is Karel Vejmelka. 24% owned, 2 wins in his last 5. The wins are the problem here. 2.39 goals against, 907 save percentage. He got a nice win today. You can look at the numbers, and they're really good. 917 save percentage, 2.4 goals against, 96th percentile in terms of goals saved above expected, but only 3 wins in 13 games. That probably does not include today, so you're at 4 in 14, including today. The team defense is not great. The wins are not great. Everything else kind of is. So depending on your league format, if you're in a categories league with save percentage and goals against, he's at least going to get you that, if not the wins. And he is going to get you some save volume, so 62nd percentile there is not bad either. He's, again, 24% owned. He should be available for you in a 12-team league. If you're looking for some other starters, there are a couple of other guys that we could talk about. We have to scroll quite a ways, and I've got to find them on the fly, which is always a problem. Ville Husso, the lowest rated goalie on this hub. However, he's been improving because Detroit is facing a bunch of injuries in net. So there's nothing worth mentioning here in terms of his hub. Everything is really bad. However, with that said, 5% ownership. He is their starter right now. He's gotten 3 straight starts, no wins in that span, 3.02 goals against, and a 906 save percentage. So the save percentage, not bad, way higher than his season-long average, which is why he went from a 9 to almost a 15. And again, this is not a play that most of you would make, but in a deep league, if you're desperate for goaltending, he's the starter for the time being. 5%, you could probably not find a starter with that low ownership percentage. So you're looking at mostly backups in that range. And with that said, one backup at the exact same ownership percentage is Joel Hofer. Now, Hofer's had a couple of really good starts in the last 2 weeks, 2 wins in his last 2, and that was against the Rangers and the Winnipeg Jets. 1.50 goals against, 942 save percentage. Their team D is pretty good, and historically, Jim Montgomery's teams have been really strong defensively. So if this continues to improve, that would be a main reason to go out and grab him. You're mainly just going to grab him for the spot starts that he gets. Binnington is way, way up higher. I believe he's right over here at 12. So Binnington is their guy. He's going to get more starts, and he should benefit from this coaching change. However, just like with most good teams, if you ever find yourself needing a spot start, you can feel pretty safe with Joel Hofer, especially with this defense trending upward and with his play trending up. 904 save percentage, 2.9 goals against, and 5 wins in 8 games is not bad. Now, going back to starters that you can find that I have to scroll really far for, but not as far as I used to. Tristan Jarry. You can see his trend rocketing up basically since he got called back up from the minors. He's at 15% ownership. He's currently on a 3-game win streak. He's starting tonight against Toronto, so that might change just based on the strength of the opponent, but 2.9 goals against, 911 save percentage in the last 3 games, so he's gotten his game together and looks a lot more like the Tristan Jarry that has those hot streaks. So if you're looking to get out in front of that hot streak and get potentially the Pittsburgh Penguins starter, which with that team defense, I don't know if you really would want their starter. Nedeljkovic had a pretty good game last night, but ultimately lost. Jarry is getting the wins at least, and they were on a 4-game win streak heading into last night. So to get a starter at 15% ownership, maybe not the best team exposure, but he is playing a lot better than he was before. Now, in terms of goaltending news, there was another interesting development. As we saw last week, Colorado making a goaltending change, and they brought in Scott Wedgwood, who I'm struggling to find on the fly right now. But Wedgwood in the past has had some moments where he's been a really decent backup option. Obviously the team is the reason why his stuff isn't showing up right now, because he did change teams, so there's a mismatch in the data. However, he's been playing relatively well. He had a good relief performance against Buffalo, 22 saves on 22 shots. He got the win there. He started against Carolina, and that's a very tough team to start against. 4.14 goals against, 882 save percentage, 30 saves on 34 shots. But again, it was Carolina. They're very good offensively. He's starting Sunday night versus Jersey. So if you're watching this Saturday or early Sunday, he will start on Sunday night. Again, not the best opponent. However, 20% ownership, and Georgiev is still really, really bad. I think he's actually below him here. If we look a little bit further down, Georgiev is the worst in the NHL in terms of goals saved above expected. Annunen just slightly better. He's also not in this, and you could see his trend going from a 75 down to a 35. That was very disappointing. I was high on him in the preseason. I actually drafted him in the Creators League. That did not work out at all. So there's a couple of guys here just based on some injury notes, some trades and whatnot. And there's one last guy we can touch on, and this is an injury that just occurred as I was putting this video together. That is Peter Mrazek is now at least day-to-day with some sort of lower body injury. So in his replacement, you can go out and get Arvid Soderblom at 2% ownership, and you can see him here at 46. Not a terrible spot for him. 919 save percentage, 2.5 goals against is really good. He is above expected. Kind of like Vejmelka, only 1 win in 7 games, so that is a little bit disappointing. The team defense is not great. It could be worse, I guess, and they just brought in a new coach, so they will probably get that new coach bump. So kind of similar to the previous guy that we talked about in terms of Husso, you can go out and find Soderblom, who's a temporary starter at 2%. So if you're in a deep league and you're looking for somebody to get you some volume this week, they do have a 4-game week. He should get 3 starts, if not 4. They probably won't start him back-to-back. So at least 3 starts from Soderblom this week. But that's going to do it for this video. If you've got any advice as to what I should do with Riddick or Lankinen, leave that in the comments section below. I also own Sorokin, who's playing pretty well, but just not getting the wins either. And I do have some guys coming off of IR. Ross Colton is back today. Nichushkin's back, and I've stashed both of those guys. So I do need some advice on the goaltending front, so leave that in the comments section below. But thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.